So, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the first episode of Decent Talks. I'm here with Riley Bainton,
Oh, hey guys, welcome to the show.
and I'm Carter Grenier.
And my name is Victor Hernandez.
Welcome, everybody. Today, we've got a very special topic for you. We're going to be talking about cryptocurrency in Canada, okay? A lot of the conversation follows cryptocurrency in the United States, but in America's hat, we have a little bit different of perspective on things, right? Our banking system is a little bit different. Our approach to things, our history, all that stuff is just a little bit more unique. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So the very first thing that I wanted to bring up was a wonderful article that I was sent by my mother. My mother is a very sweet lady. She goes on Facebook a lot. I'm sure your parents do too, right? Yeah. And on Facebook, there's quite a lot of misinformation that floats around, right? And so my mother was a very sweet lady, and she had the foresight to come talk to me and say, "Oh, Carter, I found this on my friend's page. Is this legit?" Now I'm going to read it for you guys. And I want you, yeah, and I want you guys to tell me if you think that this is legit, okay? So, special report. Justin Trudeau's latest investment has the government and big banks terrified. Canadian citizens are already raking in millions of dollars from home using this wealth loophole. But will it make them leave the office at the end of the month? Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, manages the country with an iron fist. Today, the global economy is going through a difficult time, but Canadian citizens will be able to weather the storm with the right tools and the right mindset. Last week, he appeared on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert and announced a new wealth loophole, which he says can transform anyone into a millionaire in 3 to 4 months.
Wow.
Yeah. The 48-year-old politician urged everyone in Canada to jump into this amazing opportunity before the big banks shut it down for good. Like this is phrased like it's a real article, like it's a real thing that happened. But just reading it, it sounds like a book, doesn't it?
It does. No, it also seems a little bit. I don't know. Like, oh, the big banks are gonna like shut it down in 3-4 months. Like, I don't know. If there's regulation concerns, like, I don't know if I would want to get into that.
Yeah, exactly. And sure enough, minutes after the interview was over, the Toronto Dominion Bank called to stop Trudeau's interview from being aired. But it was already too late. Here's exactly what happened. The Late Show host Stephen Colbert invited Justin Trudeau to share any tips he had on building wealth, and Prime Minister dropped a bomb. Okay, are you ready? Can you hold this? What's made me successful is jumping into new opportunities quickly without any hesitation. And right now, my number one moneymaker is a new cryptocurrency auto trading platform called Bitcoin Prime. It's the single biggest opportunity I've ever seen in my lifetime to build a small fortune fast. I urge everyone to check this out before the banks shut it down. Stephen Colbert was left in disbelief as Justin pulled out his phone and showed viewers how much money he's making through this money-making program that now has everyone in Canada whispering. um, and so, Justin Trudeau reveals on air his new money-making secret. The segment ran out of time before Trudeau could elaborate, so we got an exclusive interview with the man himself to know more about this controversial opportunity. Controversial opportunity, it just kills me. Exclusive interview with Justin Trudeau. This website, by the way, is so riddled with viruses and scams that when I looked it up to show it, it has like these pop-ups showing up on the screen saying Hernandez withdrew $10, Susan withdrew $75, right? And like all these ads that just pop up on the page. So you may have heard about this new cryptocurrency investment platform called Bitcoin Prime that's helping regular people in Canada. You may be too skeptical because it sounds too good to be true, which means that it is, by the way. If it's too good to be true, it is. I get that because I thought the same thing when a trusted friend told me about it. But after seeing with my own eyes how much money I was making, I had to try it for myself. I'm glad I tried it because it was one of the biggest and easiest money making that I've ever done. I'm talking tens of thousands of dollars a day on autopilot. It's literally the fastest way to make a windfall of cash right now. And it's not going to last for much longer when more and more people find out about it or when the banks shut it down for good. And that's the end of the Justin Trudeau section. The article drags on for a very long time, repeating the same scam things, right? And in fact, one of my favorite parts of this is that it's so old that they say, although Bitcoin price has dropped from its all-time high of $20,000 per Bitcoin, traders are still making a killing. Like, oh my God. Like, it's so not only was it at $20,000 when this time was written, but it has since dropped. So it's been written at some point since the 2017 market and this bull market. So it's at least like 3 or 4 years old almost, right? This not only is a horribly written scam, but it's like a new thing. I think possibly somebody ought to check the camera over there to make sure it's still working.
I'll go over and check the camera here. Yeah.
Thank you. Victor, what do you think about that article?
I think that as we all think here, I think it's a scam. Something that you have to know is how to do research, and that's very important when it comes to jump into this kind of stuff, especially in the crypto market, because the more informed you are less likely to believe this kind of misinformations. And also, never share private information related to your private keys. Only share like public keys, but never your private keys. And this is something that this type of scams try to usually take of you.
Exactly. If in doubt, never share it. Okay, right? It's frankly the problem of scams and all that stuff is quite rife in both Canada and the U.S. And it's funny that they use Justin Trudeau here as a method to try and appeal to the Canadian audience. I thought it was just so funny. I killed myself laughing because my mom was like, Carter, is this real? Is this legit? And I look at it for not even like 10 seconds and I can tell. But for someone like my parents or people who are not familiar with the crypto industry or they're just, new to the internet in general, they might believe that stuff, right? And they go, wow, Justin Trudeau really did an interview with Stephen Colbert, right? But when you read stuff like Stephen Colbert was shocked in his seat as the Toronto Dominion Bank called in to shut it down, but it was too late. Like, that just kills me, the dramatic of it, right?
And I just want to add into like just the fact that like, oh, the banks are gonna shut it down. Like, why would you ever want to even get into anything that could have any legal consequences 3 or 4 months later, or even any part in the future? You want to make sure you invest in things that are gonna comply with laws and comply with regulations.
So, Riley, I have a question for you. Because from what we've been talking off air, I've heard a lot from you about this. What do you think is in store in the future for the Canadian government and like regulation of crypto? Where do you think that we're headed as far as regulation goes in Canada?
That is a good question. It's definitely like there's still like uncertainty right now in terms of like where regulation currently is and where it may be going, but definitely with recent Bitcoin ETFs and Ethereum ETFs, there is a bit more friendliness towards cryptocurrencies, but when it comes more to like maybe DeFi applications or different kind of systems like those, it'd be kind of tougher to really know how those are gonna be working. But anything that's maybe like a digital store of property like Bitcoin, like would be probably okay in the future. But when it comes more to something that's like privacy coins is definitely a big one that regulators do not like at all. And so I don't know, the future of privacy coins like Monero, Zcash, those things may have problems, moving forward.
Would you use Monero for transactions like privacy coins? Would you use them?
I probably wouldn't. I don't know, unless there's. I don't know. It depends on.
Why is that?
like there's nothing I'm hiding. I'm like I don't know if you. That's the whole thing about these privacy coins, right? Like if you're trying to hide something, it's a very efficient way, right? Because no one will know exactly. There's no trail. There's no because the thing about blockchain, especially Bitcoin, is that you can see exactly where the coins came from. So what you spent with them and where they are. I think that's important to have as a public blockchain to have that ability to see where the coins are going and where they're stored. So if it's completely anonymous, and I don't know, it just makes things really difficult for, you got money laundering problems that may happen, and know your customer requirements that, that those things are important and should be, in part of regulated and stuff.
So it kind of sounds like you're a pro-regulation stance, and I would argue that a lot of people in the crypto space are still very cautious around the government, right? A government that would want to shut down cryptocurrency if you asked them, 5 years ago, right? Because of releasing that control, having access to individual people's financial information is a very powerful tool for the government to regulate, to censor, right? And that's one thing about living in Canada that I think we take for granted, is I think we take for granted that we do have a somewhat free and democratic government. But for many countries in the world, that isn't the case. And some people would argue that our freedom of information is weaker than in some third world countries, right? Because everything is watched, right? Everything is monitored, right? And so someone who lives in Morocco or in South America may not have their information tracked as heavily, right? So I think there's two sides of the coin, but in general, I think that we sometimes feel very comfortable when privacy and digital security and confidentiality of our financial information. I think it's something that we have to keep very keep guarded, right? Or else, What do you think, Victor?
I think it depends. Transparency is something that we should have, especially when it comes to cryptocurrencies, because it may allow illicit activities to happen. Something that the governments are trying to do are something called central bank digital currencies, and there are some countries around the world that are already working on this type of projects. And Canada, it seems to be interested in that aspect, but let's see what it says, Riley, about it.
Yeah, we prepped Riley before the show about CBDCs because he's our guy on that, and I'd like to kind of hear what he has to say.
Also, yeah, so Canada looking into a central bank digital currency. So I don't know, Canada before was kind of I don't know if we'll get into this. But I guess recently, it was just in the summer, they released a staff working paper outlining some benefits that a central bank digital currency could have. So there's two things that would have to happen for a central bank digital currency to really have a good part of the economy. It's either cash is being used less, or there's an alternative currency that people are using. So and I don't know, as we see throughout the pandemic and stuff, cash has been used less and less. It's whatever the citizens want to use in terms of exchange. I don't know. So as cash is going down, and then an alternative means of payment, cryptocurrency, as that becomes more and more popular, that could maybe threaten, having the Canadian dollar then, right? Because maybe people may want to try and use different ways of payment. Like it could be Bitcoin or something, right? But that depends if it gets within regulation, though.
So you're kind of saying people have to want to use it. There has to be a desire to use a digital currency from Canadian people. People have to want to use it.
I think if people would want to use it, especially, I don't know, it would definitely be really beneficial if cash is being used less, and then.
But how so? How beneficial? What does the CBDC give us exactly?
CBDC would definitely help increase it would help with welfare. I think that'd be the big part of it. So if cash is being used less than if we're not be using cash, you want to try and help those in remote areas too as well that maybe depend on that. But you can't have cash and a central bank digital currency at the same. It's tough to have both going at the same time. So it's really the transition too as well. How do you transition from, a traditional, I guess, using cash to more digital, right? It's the move over as well.
Yeah, the transition from like our standard current cash system over to a CBDC. And depending on how exactly it's implemented, it could either be really smooth or we could have riots in the streets, right? And I think that a lot of our current system to the common person already feels very digital, feels very, digital currency-esque. And so it could be as simple as like just a back end change on the banks, right? So you ditch the accounting system and you go over to a CBDC, and the end user continues to use their debit and credit card like they always do, right? That's maybe one implementation, but I hear that there's others going around.
And definitely, like they mentioned too, how it could really help with innovation if you have a central bank digital currency. They were mentioning how like you can even build like you can build like smart contracts with it, or you can build protocols with the central bank digital currency to help improve innovation, to help make the digital economy become more more accessible and more in Canada for it to be all used. And also monetary policy too. So having a central bank digital currency, you can directly, more easily, use monetary policy with it than if something like cash. It could take time delay and stuff so you can really improve the speed and efficiency too as well.
Yeah, I agree. Victor, what do you think?
I think you are right, but something that we have to also consider is like how resilient are these um, new ways of deal with money. Because if we're talking about digital currency, we need to take aspects like how resilient is the technology, how resilient is to a, let's say, a shortcut of electricity or something like that. What happens if there is a earthquake? What happens if there is a hurricane? All these aspects about the resilience of the technology needs to be proof, and in order to make sure that it works just as cash, right? Offline in this sense.
No, I remember, Victor, we talked about this maybe like a month ago or 2 months ago, where there has to be some sort of part where you can make the central bank digital currency available as a peer-to-peer offline in case if something happens. You got to have it resilient, and you got to have it being able so you can still do transactions in some sort of offline mode, because natural disasters do happen. And I don't know, a central bank digital currency could really help with natural disasters, but there has to be some sort of way it can still work without it being connected fully to the network.
Yeah, and that kind of comes down to having like a global internet availability, and there's tons of solutions out there for that, and like there's Starlink and there's more. But as far as like resiliency to earthquakes and natural disasters go, that's why we have nodes and we have a distributed system, right? So you don't have all your nodes in one place, right? Hopefully the CBDC will be decentralized enough, at least on a hardware level, such that you would have some nodes in Ottawa, some nodes in Halifax, some nodes in Nunavut, some nodes in Alaska, some nodes. They may not even necessarily have to be in Canada. They could be somewhere else, just hosting the chain. Because that way, if there is a natural disaster, let's say, there is an earthquake in BC, the big one, right? Finally hits the province. Then all the nodes here might get wrecked. But if you've got nodes in Alberta, you got nodes in wherever, they will continue to support the network. And that's the same thing for Bitcoin. It's the same thing for Ethereum. Like, imagine if all the Bitcoin nodes were in China, and then China does their miner crackdown, right? And they punt all the miners out. The network would be offline. It would be down. It would be completely down. Because if all the nodes were in China and then they all get shut down, and China, because of a policy that China makes, well, you're wrecked. And so the same thing would go for a central bank digital currency. Now, obviously, in a central bank digital currency, I would imagine that the central bank, the government, would reserve the right to flick the switch on it, right? They would reserve the right, I would assume, to tell the nodes to shut down. And that is part of the risk of CBDCs versus truly decentralized chains, is just that ability to shut it down. And that's why I think even with a CBDC, I think there is always going to be a value for decentralized chains like we've got going on right now, especially in countries that are more likely to flip that switch on and off more than others. Like I imagine Canada and the U.S. and Western European countries and such would be very careful around that stuff and wouldn't dare the economic instability of switching off their CBDC because there's riots or something. But there are other countries where, that probably is a lot more likely. And for those countries, there's a risk.
Yeah, I agree. I agree for sure. Like if you can just switch off a CBDC, that would cause a lot of that can cause a lot of problems for sure. But I think with the structure of the CBD network, there definitely how it's designed, it would be designed in a way where it'd be really difficult. If not, it would have to be a complete really necessary emergency where it has to turn off, and it would involve a lot of process steps. It wouldn't be just a simple light switch. All right, here we go. We're shutting it all down here. But it would definitely it would have to be a really enforced it would take a lot of steps for it to go down. It wouldn't be a simple here we go, turn it off.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. What do you guys think about exchanges in Canada? So we have access to a good number of crypto exchanges, platforms, and such. A lot of them tend to have U.S. versions or U.S. exclusive versions, but luckily we get access to almost all of them in Canada. There are a few exceptions. Quebec and Ontario are changing some of their legislation around that. And increasingly, we find that we have to go through more and more middlemen to get our crypto onto exchanges, right? Americans can just sort of wave their credit card at Coinbase and buy whatever they want, but we have to go through some more steps. I know I personally use things like BitBuy as my sort of fiat on-ramp. I've been told that you guys use different things. You want to talk about that?
Also, different exchanges.
Yeah, things that are not top exchanges, but secondary like on ramps. We have to do these on ramps just to get our fiat into the place where we can exchange it for crypto.
Oh, okay, yeah. So there's definitely some exchanges that are even Canadian based. I know Netcoins has been pretty popular. It's been on the radio. They had some ads at the bus stop. I saw. That one's a very easy, user friendly. I highly recommend that. Some of their fees are a little high, but definitely really easy for just transferring your money onto the exchange and convert that to Bitcoin. And they're actually coming out with a new debit card soon where you get 3% cash back on your Bitcoin.
Not sponsored, by the way.
Not sponsored, but it's a pretty cool thing that they're releasing, and there's something that's a new trend as well too. Now I'm seeing a lot of the exchanges, a lot of different providers are providing debit and credit cards, which is very interesting too.
Much like the Crypto.com credit card, the shiny blue one, right? Victor, would you ever use a crypto card like a debit card or something tied to a crypto account?
That's a very interesting question. I would say yes, why not? It would be a new way to actually interact with the crypto that you have at stake or have accumulated for a long time, right? I would do it, definitely. I'm very excited for these projects that are coming soon. A lot of crypto exchange applications are actually about to launch. Some of these are like crypto.com that is already has launched three, I guess, 3 or 4 debit cards.
Yeah.
But yes, I really like them. I like the concept. Yes. What about you?
I like to think that I'd use it. I'm kind of. Oh, do you have one?
I got one
Oh
right
my
here.
God, he's got one. Look at that. I've never actually seen that. Wow. Oh, and it has your name engraved on that. Oh, that's cool. I'm not gonna show the camera that, but
Not sponsored.
wow. Look at
Not sponsored by the
not
podcast.
sponsored. Not sponsored. Wing, wing, wing. But wow, it's kind of shiny too. Yeah. Wow, that's so cool.
I was gonna try and stake for the bigger version. So make sure if you're gonna get a debit card, you're gonna pick the right one that you want for the long term, because that's the free version. So it's still not bad. You get some cash back in the crypto.com token. But if you want to go for a bigger card, you should just make sure that you're gonna get that from the start, because it's hard to transition to a new card. I'm finding right now.
Really? Because I remember the staking amounts for the better cards are like several $100s worth, right, of staking. It's not cheap. So like, do they make you run through lots of hoops and stuff?
Oh, if I just to change cards, I picked the free one. But if I wanted to change to do like the $500 staking one, like I'm just having a hard time trying to like, oh, I want to get a new card. I think once you're committed, you're committed. But yeah, no, the higher staking ones, you get way more rewards. It's kind of cool. But I think the highest one is $400,000. Believe it or not, if you have $400,000 of Spirit Cash laying around, you can get some good rewards.
Yeah, the rewards are very fancy, but then I think about stuff like that too, and I look at the rewards, and the rewards are great, of course, right? They do things like they pay for Netflix, they pay for Spotify, they pay for all that stuff. But when I'm thinking about it, if I have $4,000 that I don't need for anything else, and I'm going to put it on a card, I think I can afford my own Netflix and Spotify and stuff, right? So the dollar value of some of that things, it's like pledge $1 million and we'll give you $20 free. It's like it's only attractive if you only have $20 in your bank account, right? You're like, wow, I could really use that. I better get that $1 million threshold.
Apparently, from what I was told, like you get the Netflix, the Amazon Prime, but you get the dollar value of that get paid in the Crypto.com token. So it says it's included, but like this is from what I'm told. But like you get the dollar value of what that would be. So you could spend it on that, or you can just hold the token itself.
Back to topic a little bit now. Binance withdrew from Ontario a little while ago, maybe about a month ago, in response to some new legislation from the Ontario Securities Commission, which doesn't act for the whole country. It only acts for Ontario, but it does function very similar to the SEC in the United States. So they kind of act as a large regulatory body. They're not the ultimate one, but they're influential. And if Ontario goes one way, a lot of times the other provinces also follow suit. So they have, however, approved other regulators to operate in Ontario, such as BitBuy. I think Gemini is going to be available there soon, if it isn't already, and stuff like that. Now, I'm not surprised that they went down on Binance, because Binance does have a habit of engaging in some of the gray areas of crypto exchanges, futures, which can sometimes be called, unregistered securities. Binance used to have a no KYC aspect to their exchange, so you didn't have to register your identity. You could just use it, which is kind of how crypto exchanges are intended to be used. And there's still many, many exchanges out there like that. DeFi, shady exchanges like OKX and stuff. But a lot of them are starting to implement KYC requirements, just because that is how you survive in this regulatory landscape. And until that changes, which it may never, that's just how it's going to be. You're going to have to trade convenience and trust for giving up parts of your identity. And while me and you might be okay with that, right? If I was from a marginalized group, or what the IMF would consider a high-risk country, then those services are suddenly locked out to me. Like if I live in Afghanistan, I cannot use Gemini, for example, right? Because of KYC. That's, if it was not for KYC, you do not have, this is not supported in your region, right? That is the most frustrating thing in the world, when you go to watch a video on YouTube, and you go to watch that video on YouTube and it says, sorry, this content is not available in your region. And it sucks, right? But that's like low stakes. That's just a YouTube video. Imagine that's your finances. That's your crypto, right? That's your ticket out of, poverty, right? And that's why I think, sure, we do this KYC just so that we can survive in the regulatory landscape, but I think that it's still very important to have these exchanges that don't use KYC, so that people can still access them, So let's move on a little bit, shall we? Let's going to talk about another Canadian exchange, but this one's not around anymore. We're going to talk about Quadriga CX. They used to be called the Coinbase of Canada, which is quite the title, right? And so one of our members here, Riley, has had some experience with them back while they were still around.
Yeah, back in the day, back in the prior bull run, back in 2017 now, 4 years ago. Yeah, 4 years ago. Time's flying, but yeah, that's when I always say the name of quad. I always say Quadrax. You've been trying to make me say it correct. Quad. How does it go again? Quadro.
I don't even know why I bother. Quadriga CX.
Quadriga CX. All right, I still got it wrong, but whatever. we're speaking on the exchange, but yeah, though I used that. That was one of my first exchanges I used. That was my first time really investing in cryptocurrencies. Was back in 2017 when everything was starting to get really hyped up and markets were going crazy. Quadriga CX was very Quadriga CX was very popular. it was a very popular Canadian exchange, and it had a lot of funds. It had a few $100 million, and at the time, that's a lot in the crypto space, given the market cap size of the whole space it was back then. But yeah, it had some really interesting options too on their exchange. You can withdraw cash delivery. Can you believe that or not?
No.
that was the biggest thing that got me, and it's just like, how is this compliant? You can deliver up to I think it was $10,000 you can deliver to your front door in a box.
Wow, that's like the sketchiest thing I've ever heard of, right? Like I can't. Like, did you just get it delivered in a box? Did it just show up on your front door like an Amazon package? What if a porch raider came by and just took it off your porch, like just a box of money?
I guess I never tried it. I was always like, I didn't want to try it. I thought it was really, but then by looking more into it, it was really weird too. Like the headquarters of this place, or the address that they provided. I remember me and Victor, we looked into it a few months ago, and it was really just a UPS store. You want to explain a little bit more, Victor, of what we saw?
So we were looking at the headquarters of this place, and it seemed to be on a popular street here in Vancouver, and it was attached to the backside of a UPS store. And the UPS store wasn't a big one, at least. It was just a building of maybe one story. And it didn't seem to have something else. And a company like this size, that manage a lot of money, you would expect a little bit more construction for their headquarters, right? So we realized that was a red flag, a massive red flag. So I can imagine that some people could also have a look at that and maybe decide not to invest or put their money into that. And if they do that, it was a good option, because what the company did, it was something out of a movie.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. Why isn't Quadriga CX around anymore? Well, it's really quite simple. All the money was on the founder's laptop, or at least the access to it. There was a board. There was a board of directors, of course, right? But the founder had all of the money on a laptop. And one day in 2018, oh gosh, it feels like it should be older than that. But yeah, no, 2018. One day, the owner and his wife took a flight to India. And on their trip in India, there's photos of them going to see the Taj Mahal and stuff, right? Going to see various landmarks. On that trip to India, the owner mysteriously fell ill and passed away on that trip. And so that was the last that anyone ever saw of him. And he took with him his laptop, which contained all of the investor assets, all of the keys, all of the accounts that were related to Quadriga, everything, right? The board had nothing. He had everything. And he was mysteriously gone. And the Indian authorities reported that he had died, and they produced some sort of records that showed that he died. But no body was ever found, of course, right? And no independent source could verify that he had died, along with his wife, of course, right? She was gone too. And so we kind of have this scenario where it's very likely that he took the hundreds of millions of dollars and faked his own death, and is out there somewhere, maybe in India, maybe somewhere else, living a new life, rich as can be, off of stolen money. Now, did this have consequences? Of course, it had super severe consequences. And it is part of the reason why banks in Canada are very anxious around crypto. Now, yes, you can always make the argument, well, they're going to lose customers because of crypto, and that's true. But a big chunk of it has to do with the Quadriga CX incident. Banks do not want investors to be defrauded or to be victims of fraud. They want investors to be safe investing their money. And if they're going to keep it on an exchange, which is what a lot of people unfortunately do, then their money is at risk, right? And with Quadriga CX, there's nothing that the Canadian financial system could really do about that. There's no middleman to force to be responsible if he's gone and died in another country, right? So that created the environment that we live in now, right? That contributed to why a lot of banks will maybe even ask you if you're moving money, like if it's you that's moving money. Like I've heard from some friends who've been moving money with their banks and they're going to buy crypto. They've had their accounts frozen temporarily because the bank thought that they were being scammed, right? Or felt that they should not be buying crypto with their money, right? And that's not good. And if you are in that situation, you can move banks. You can take your money out and go to a bank that's more friendly, okay? Because, you just don't let your bank control what you can and can't do with your own money, right? So, and that's part of what crypto is all about, is detaching yourself from the banks, the banking industry, and giving yourself a little bit of freedom. And so Quadriga CX and issues like that make that quite difficult. Right? They do. They make it difficult. And so I'm quite glad that I never got to use Quadriga CX, right? Because I very well might have ended up leaving my money on there and losing it, right? Now imagine if you're like an early investor and you had like 10 Bitcoin that you bought in like 2014, put it on Quadriga CX, forgot about it, and then 2018 rolls around, Quadriga CX goes bust, you still don't really know much about it, and then 2021 rolls around, Bitcoin hits $60,000, and you think to yourself, oh my god, I had like 10 Bitcoin on Quadriga, I'd better check that website, and it's gone, and he's run away with it. You've lost $100,000 there. It's crazy.
Okay, something very important that I'm going to mention again is that if you are new to cryptocurrencies and if you would like to buy your first crypto, you have to do it knowing a little bit of the topic or a lot, depending of how much interest do you have in this new way to make money. You can ask friends that know a lot of it, that have done it, and that they have done it for a long time. You can research on internet, not like YouTube helps, but not all YouTube channels are correctly. It's better if you go to specific websites. Do you guys know any specific websites where you can?
Just before we get to that, Riley, I think, had something to comment on the Quadriga matter.
I think, so that was definitely just crazy. The whole thing, hundreds of millions, like just gone. That was just so I think moving forward, I haven't really done a lot of research, but what are you guys' thoughts on, I guess, how are exchanges now handling private keys in Canada? So like, what do you guys think the standard is now? Because back then it was just him and his laptop. I can imagine now to be an exchange in Canada, there has to be some sort of guideline, like, hey, like you guys split up that private key, or there's got to be some sort of custody or some sort of a party that holds it else. It can't be all, what do you guys think?
I think it depends on the exchange, how reputable it wants to be, right? Like if you are using, a really sketchy exchange, it can still happen. Like there was an exchange called Atom Mars that went under because the founder ran off with the money, and that only happened in like June of this year. So it still happens. Now something like Coinbase is on the American stock exchanges. It's a publicly traded company, one of the first in the crypto industry. And a company like that is going to be very thoroughly audited. And the auditors are going to check things like, who has access to investor funds and stuff like that. So I would imagine that, yes, they do have their money split up across different things, different custodians, some insurance, which is typically how the financial industry handles these things, is they have federal insurance over investor funds. So if the exchange or the broker or whoever runs away with the money, then the insurance will cover it up to $1 million. So that's cool. But not all exchanges operate that way. We can only encourage them to. So yeah, it's all up to that. Now, back to Victor's point about like useful websites. Mazari is a great research website you should check out. Then there's also CoinMarketCap, which gives you a good interview about the success, the popularity, the size of a crypto, right? If all you do is read about them on their website or on social media, you might get a bit of a warped perspective about how successful they actually are. So if you go on a website, it'll make you think it's the next best thing besides Ethereum and Bitcoin, but then you go on a CoinMarketCap and it's number 783rd on the list. Right? That's not good. That's bad, right? That's on microcap. It's going to be very risky. And maybe it's a good project, but it's probably risky, right? Like I would imagine. So you be very careful with your money. So folks, we're getting close towards the end of our session. Wait, is there anything you want to say before closing notes?
Oh, I just want to add too, another great website is allyourfeeds.com. All your feed. It includes technology, not just in blockchain, but what can be associated with that, Internet of Things, biotech. That's something I want to mention too. Also AI and green technology. So you can get all your information in recent news on what's going on in all these different spaces on that website. And I highly recommend that. It's really, really good. And then just one thing on biotech in Canada. What are your thoughts, Victor, right now and everything?
Well, specifically here in Vancouver, Vancouver is one of the capitals for biotechs, and blockchain seems to have a promising future in this industry. Probably you guys are familiar with these companies like Ancestry.com, 23andMe, which are companies that allowed users to have their genetic information on a database. Um, in theory, blockchain can help us to storage or actually allow access to these databases. You can allow people to look at this information, and you can admin this with your private keys, and also you can give people like doctors, like any physician that you allow, or any person that you know that you trust, and you can give them a specific public key. Uh, why this is important? Because information like your DNA or your genome, it's very important. It's something that is attached to you, and it has a lot of consequences. It could be used to design a specific therapies, that it could be uh, the solution for a new disease that it may happen in the future, or it already happening. It is already happening. Um, Also, this allows something that is called precision medicine or precision health. And blockchain can actually help us to ensure that we can protect our DNA to create a specific therapies for ourselves or for other people. So if you have a gene that can be the cure of a disease, and it's yours and it's only yours, and you have the private key to protect it, um, blockchain can help you to do so. If you have these data out under the surveillance of another company, they can easily take it and make profit of your genes, and probably you would never receive any compensation of because of that, right? So that's what I think. There's also more things that how blockchain can help us in the biotech industry. Yeah.
Good stuff. All right, I think we're going to start our final questions, okay? Final question for Riley. End of year Bitcoin prediction. Right now, Bitcoin is hovering around 49K US. What do you think we're headed for the very end of the year? We've only got a couple weeks left.
It's very hard to tell in the very short term here. Anything could really happen in the next few weeks, but I think maybe the bottom's in. I don't think we can go much lower than what it was, a few weeks ago, where it was, or last week it was like 42 or 43. I'm not sure. I haven't been keeping up with the price charts much, but I definitely don't see it going below 40. But it could go to maybe 60. I think that could be pretty nice if it can go back to 60 end of year. But what do you guys think?
I think like probably around December 31st, it may be around 58K probably. That's what I think. Maybe like around the first month, like January, maybe may go around 60. But then it's very like it depends on many factors, right? Um, it's something that only by having a lot of data and analyzing this data, you may have an accurate or prediction. It's something very hard to say, but I guess like 58 by the end of the year. Yeah.
Yeah, those both like sound like valid ideas to me. I think we're gonna see what crypto does on Christmas. I wish that I was a trader in 2017 to tell you what crypto does on Christmas or New Year's, because those are big holidays, right? So see what stock markets do and how they affect crypto. But yeah, no, I think something similar, probably like it'd be nice to get back to 60K, but realistically, maybe we break 55 or so. In the good case, I think we're going to kind of hang out here somewhere flatline for the rest of the year, and then maybe next year we'll pick up. Folks, that's been the podcast. I'm Carter.
I'm Riley.
And I am Victor.
Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Bye-bye now.